This is for Mommy, Rosie exclaimed as she suddenly flipped the stew onto the floor. What? I was startled. It was the first time my son's family had come to visit our home. I was preparing dinner with my daughter-in-law, Amelia, and my 3-year-old granddaughter, Rosie, when she intentionally spilled the stew on the floor instead of placing it at Amelia's seat. There was no tripping or slipping of the hand. It was clearly deliberate. Why would you do such a thing? You shouldn't waste food like that. I couldn't help but scold Rosie harshly, but I wanted to make it easier for Mommy to eat. Surprised at being scolded, Rosie looked around with tears in her eyes and said, "It's easier to eat on the floor." I repeated her words, unable to believe them. Mommy always eats on the floor? What do you mean? Rosie tried to explain through her sobs. Hearing her unbelievable words, I looked at Amelia, who had turned pale and was shrinking into herself. Seeing Amelia with a pale face and hunched shoulders, I felt that she was hiding something. "Good morning," I said as usual, greeting the photo at the family altar. "I'm Olivia Moore, having lost my husband a few years ago, now living alone." The expression on my late husband's photo was stern, with deep wrinkles between his brows. I recall rarely seeing him smile during his lifetime. Our arranged marriage had been one of mutual consideration since we met. We barely spoke, each sticking to our own roles. The idea of a loving couple was a distant dream. We never went out together, even on weekends. I had no friends to call my own, and in those days, without the convenience of smartphones, I came to accept that this was what married life was like. Weekdays were for work, and on weekends, my husband would either stay in his room or go out, returning late at night. We sometimes wouldn't even speak at home, and the atmosphere was always chilly. Despite this, my in-laws kept pestering for a grandchild. Suspecting illness due to the lack of pregnancy news, they urged me to visit the hospital repeatedly. My husband, annoyed at being nagged, only shared the bedroom with me for one night. Fortunately, I got pregnant and resolved to raise the child with all my love. My husband remained indifferent, even as my belly grew, and mercilessly left all household chores to me, even when I was incapacitated by morning sickness and couldn't attend the birth. Exhausted, I once asked him for help, only to be briskly dismissed with, "I'm busy." But when our son Elias was born, my husband changed as if he were a different person and became actively involved in parenting. Despite never having gone out with my husband before, when I suggested taking Elias shopping, he insisted. He insisted on joining us. "What kind of picture books should we read to Elias?" I asked, unable to hide my joy in speaking more to my husband than usual. "Maybe these clothes would look good on him," I suggested. However, contrary to my excitement, my husband remained stern and hardly responded. He shook his head at everything I chose, sighed, and sternly told me, "I'll decide everything, so don't bother." I always thought parenting should be a collaborative effort. Yet my husband dismissed everything I tried or said, insisting that as a man, he knew things about raising a boy that I couldn't understand. He even moved Elias to another room during meals to help him focus. It seems he was meticulously disciplined in everything, from how to hold flatware to the order of eating. It took half a year before my husband approved of Elias's eating manners and allowed him to eat with me. The first time I saw Elias eat, I was amazed at how neatly he did it. Elias never played with friends, focusing solely on his studies and never complained. I always admired him. "Elias, you've worked hard? Why don't you take a break once in a while?" I would try to pamper him with cake as a snack when my husband wasn't around, but he would refuse, saying, "Sweet things aren't good for the body," without even glancing at me. In high school, Elias joined the baseball team to toughen his spirit and became a star player. Afterwards, he continued to work hard at everything with the mental strength he had cultivated, and he graduated as the valedictorian from a famous university known for its difficulty. Raised by a strict father, Elias grew up to be so graceful that people would stop and stare as he walked by. Several women even asked him out. I once saw Elias sighing to himself, "Elias, don't you have someone you're interested in?" "Rather than romance, I find it more meaningful to spend my time improving myself," he replied, letting out a deeper sigh. Ultimately, Elias, always a lone wolf, never made friends or a romantic partner and became an object of admiration. After graduating, he landed a job at a prestigious publishing company that everyone envied. The job was demanding. Elias was constantly on business trips and rarely came home. He would wake up early every morning and return home really late at night. With such a lifestyle, he didn't have much of a chance to meet someone and seemed to be solely focused on his work. Even my husband would be asleep by the time Elias got home. Seeing Elias hungry, I secretly prepared snacks for him at night. A man's body is his capital, my husband used to say, allowing Elias only a simple, perfectly balanced diet. Of course, Elias didn't allow any snacks or late-night meals at all. But no matter how balanced the diet was, he remained disciplined and focused on his work. Elias's diet and constant work took a toll on him, and it was clear he wasn't getting enough nutrition. It would definitely make him tired. Elias had been turning down late-night snacks, saying he wanted to sleep instead. But one day, after several such exchanges, I told him that the stew was ready. "I want to sleep," he replied, cutting me off. But then his stomach growled loudly. "See, your stomach doesn't lie," I said gently as Elias blushed and looked down. "Can I really eat it?" he asked. "Of course I made it for that reason." "Thank you," he said, his voice trembling slightly, as he carefully brought the spoon to his mouth. Then, with the spoon still in his mouth, Elias froze. "What's wrong, Elias?" I asked. "It's delicious." It seems it was shockingly good for Elias. He devoured the steaming stew, even asking for seconds. After finishing 3 plates, Elias had a smile like I'd never seen before. "Ah, this is the best feeling. I didn't know such delicious food existed. You've been working so hard every day. I'll prepare a snack for you tomorrow night too," I said. From that day on, Elias began to eagerly eat the late-night snacks I made. Thankfully, his weight returned to normal, and my husband remained unaware. These late-night snack times became our only time together, and a moment I looked forward to. "Mom, what's for tonight's snack?" Elias asked excitedly. "Tonight, it's ramen noodles," I replied. "Ramen? I've always wanted to try it," Elias exclaimed. For my son, who had never eaten out, every snack I made was a new experience. He would eat each dish with sparkling eyes, like a child. Watching Elias head off to work in the morning became my daily routine. As he recovered physically, he quickly rose to prominence at work, becoming an ace in the office. This led to an increasing number of women showing interest in him. Seeing this, my husband arranged a matchmaking session, and things progressed smoothly, leading to Elias getting married without ever dating. Elias's wife, Amelia, worked as a secretary for the CEO of a well-known company. She seemed reserved but polite and serious. "Nice to meet you. Please treat me kindly," she said, bowing deeply when we first met, which is quite rare these days. "I'll do my best to be a good wife and support Elias," she added with a smile. When Amelia smiled with her beautiful, soft eyes, it was like a flower blooming. "We're family now, so don't hesitate to ask for anything," I said, exchanging contact information with her. It made me happy, as if I had gained a daughter. Amelia, whose parents lived a bit far away, nodded happily at my words. It's very reassuring. Then the newlyweds moved to the next town. Knowing that newlywed life can be full of unfamiliarities, I decided to send messages regularly to check in. However, Amelia, who was already skilled in household tasks, seemed to have won Elias's heart with her cooking. Although Elias often went on business trips, it seemed they had a good relationship, spending weekends shopping together. Beyond that, Amelia was very considerate towards me, offering me throat lozenges when I had a sore throat and suggesting good remedies when I mentioned my back pain. She always promptly replied to my messages, so I had no worries. I shared with my husband about how well Elias and Amelia were doing, and he just nodded, as if it was to be expected, making me feel completely at ease. I'm so happy to see them doing well. For years into their marriage, they had a daughter named Rosie. I was overjoyed at the birth of my granddaughter, and even my husband seemed a bit softer. But life doesn't always bring continuous happiness. Before Rosie turned 2, my husband suddenly fell ill. He had been carrying stress without us knowing, leading to a life of seldom smiles. By the time he was hospitalized, it was too late. Cancer had spread throughout his body. He passed away, leaving me alone. After the funeral, the messages from Amelia gradually became scarce. When I offered to help with childcare, she politely refused, saying she didn't want to trouble me. It all started after my husband's funeral. Amelia's behavior became strange. She was curt in her replies about Rosie or daily life, and there were days with no response at all. She wouldn't answer my calls, leaving me worried every day. As I felt the distance between us growing, Rosie turned 3. I thought of celebrating her birthday at my house and sent a message. Happy 3rd birthday to Rosie. Are you getting used to parenting now? Yes, thank you. It's been a while since we've seen each other. How about a dinner party at my place? No, don't bother, she responded coldly, making me sigh. I've been lonely since I became alone. I'd love to celebrate my granddaughter's 3rd birthday. I messaged her. She replied curtly, then I'll come. I was puzzled by Amelia's firm attitude, but the joy of seeing my granddaughter quickly dispelled my concerns. Finally, the day of the dinner party arrived. Amelia, it's been a while, I said with a smile to her somewhat tense expression. Mother-in-law, it's been a while. Thank you for inviting us today. Amelia replied. I wondered if she was just nervous from the long absence as I let them into the house. Come on, Rosie, say hello to your grandma. Amelia urged. Rosie, who had been shyly fidgeting behind Amelia, stepped forward and bowed politely. Hello, Grandma, she said brightly, in stark contrast to Amelia's timid demeanor. Hi there, Rosie. I made stew today. Let's eat together. Yay. I love stew. It was the first time I had seen Rosie since she was a baby. I had worried she might be shy, but her cheerful and lively demeanor lifted my spirits a bit. However, Amelia seemed unusually nervous, constantly looking around with a hunched back. Though she was always considerate of others, this behavior didn't seem like the Amelia I knew. I decided to give her space, thinking she might not want to talk about certain things. Is Elias not here yet? Amelia glanced around the house. Oh, Elias will come directly from his business trip, so he'll be late. Didn't you hear from him? Oh, that's right. I'm sorry, I might have missed his message. Amelia replied, seemingly relieved for a moment before hastily checking her phone. I'm sorry, I did get a message. I can't believe I missed it. I'm such a failure as a wife, she said, looking pale and blaming herself excessively. It was only a recent message, so there was no need for her to worry so much. But with Rosie present, I didn't want to press the issue. It's okay, Amelia. You did nothing wrong. Sit down, I'll reheat the stew. Sorry, she murmured in such a low voice that I had to ask her to repeat herself. What did you say, Amelia? No, it's nothing, she replied, shrinking even more. I felt she was hiding something. It was just a hunch, but these intuitions are often accurate. I'll help carry, Rosie said, breaking the heavy mood with her innocent smile. Thank you, dear. But stay away from the stove, it's dangerous. Rosie, offering to help at her age, was impressively mature for a 3-year-old. Meanwhile, Amelia sat down hesitantly, solemnly staring at her spoon. Here we are, everyone. It's hot, so be careful. Okay, Rosie responded enthusiastically. Carefully holding her plate, she walked slowly over to Amelia. Then suddenly, this is for Mommy, Rosie declared and did something unbelievable. What? She spilled the stew on the floor, not on Amelia's seat. Wasn't an accident. She did it on purpose. Why would you do that? Wasting food like this, I scolded her, unable to hide my disappointment. Unable to hide my shock, but I wanted to make it easier for Mommy to eat. Rosie, startled by my reaction, looked away with tears in her eyes. Easier to eat? I repeated, unable to believe her words. Mommy always eats on the floor? I asked, confused. What do you mean? Rosie explained between sobs. Daddy told her to, so Mommy always eats on the floor. Hearing Rosie's unbelievable words, I turned to Amelia, who was trembling and pale. Amelia, what's going on? I asked, concerned. Well, Amelia began to speak hesitantly when the doorbell rang, indicating a visitor. It was Elias on the intercom. Though the timing was bad, I quickly cleaned up the spilled stew and welcomed Elias in. I'm home. Did something happen? Elias asked, seeming puzzled by the delay in opening the door. Welcome back, I said, trying to act normal to hide my disturbance. Is that stew I smell? Elias asked. Yes, your favorite stew, I replied, relieved that I had chosen to make it. Unaware of what had happened, Elias cheerfully entered the living room and sat down heavily, not even noticing Amelia's distressed state. Mom's stew is always the best, Elias said loudly while Amelia bit her lip tightly beside him. Feeling the tense atmosphere between them, I tried to keep smiling. Though I couldn't fully believe that Elias was making Amelia eat on the floor, I sensed that their relationship was not good. The dinner continued with superficial conversation, and I ate the stew without really tasting it, managing to end the meal peacefully. After Elias and his family left, I messaged Amelia about the incident. But all she replied was a single word: nothing. It can't be nothing, I murmured to my phone screen. While casually reviewing my exchanges with Amelia, I pondered over the recent events. Amelia's messages are always so cold, I thought, unable to believe that the kind Amelia I knew could be sending such curt replies. Considering what happened earlier, it crossed my mind that maybe Elias was controlling her phone. I can't overlook what happened earlier. I need to check on her directly, I decided, and set out to visit Elias's house. Though it was early spring, it was already dark and chilly. Shivering in the cold air, I arrived at their house only to hear a loud argument. "It's your fault," Elias's voice shouted. I wondered and hurriedly pressed the doorbell. Clearly forced smiling, Elias greeted me. "Mom, what are you doing here so soon after leaving?" After leaving, I needed to talk to Amelia about something. Well, Amelia's tired from visiting her in-laws today. I can pass the message, Elias replied, blocking my way in a fluster. This is an important woman-to-woman talk, I insisted firmly, and even Elias, usually unyielding, let me in, albeit bewildered. "Amelia?" I called out, looking around. Noticing the bathroom light was on, I headed there. "I'm going in," Elias hurriedly followed me, panicking. "Amelia's in there, you can't go in now." But I entered the bathroom slightly ahead of him and turned my gaze inside. What I saw was beyond anything I could have imagined. "Amelia?" Amelia was in the bathroom, sitting drenched from head to toe. "Mother-in-law, I was cleaning the bathroom, but I accidentally turned on the shower," she said weakly, trying to smile at me. "This is terrible. You'll catch a cold if you don't dry off quickly." I found a towel and wrapped Amelia in it, drying her hair and arms. "All right. Sorry, Mom. Amelia's always clumsy when I'm not watching," Elias said without any sign of helping, just standing there with crossed arms and a frown. Amelia was in a daze, just letting me do what needed to be done. Seeing her shiver, I couldn't help but believe what Rosie had said was true. "Amelia, you're somewhat dry now, but you need to change into dry clothes right away." "Thank you, mother-in-law. I'm sorry. It's always like this." "I'm troubled because Amelia can't do anything without me," Elias grumbled under his breath, but the way Amelia cowered was far from ordinary. I excused myself to use the restroom and secretly called the police. Soon, the doorbell rang and the officers announced their arrival. "Who is it?" Elias asked, reluctantly opening the door. "We've had complaints about loud noises from this house," the officer stated. Elias tried to dismiss it as a misunderstanding, but the officer insisted, saying they were investigating the neighborhood and needed his cooperation. "This must be my unlucky day," Elias muttered, scratching his head in confusion as he opened the door. Suddenly, 3 officers burst in. One took Amelia and Rosie to safety, while the other 2 firmly held Elias. "What?" Elias resisted, but he couldn't match the officer's strength. "What are you accusing me of doing?" Knowing he couldn't overpower them, Elias still struggled and raised his voice in an attempt to resist. When warned to calm down or face obstruction charges, Elias's face turned pale, and he quickly subdued. Meanwhile, Amelia, overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events, began to understand the situation as she saw Elias calm down and tears streamed down her face. She murmured to us, "I can't take it anymore." Unable to contain her feelings any longer, Amelia expressed them as if pouring them out. "Right after we got married, he submitted my resignation without my consent. I appealed to my boss that I hadn't written it, but he didn't believe me. Rumors had spread in her office that she was complaining about her low salary and being dissatisfied with the boss, none of which were true. In the end, her resignation was accepted, much to her despair. After resigning to become a full-time housewife, it was hell. The first thing she mentioned was that her phone was taken away. During the early days of their marriage, she wanted to consult with me or her parents about many things, but Elias wouldn't listen. Especially with meals, no matter what I cooked, he'd criticize it. I wanted to ask you for recipes, but he told me to figure it out myself, she explained. Initially, she could bear it since it was only verbal criticism. When Rosie was born, Elias helped with childcare. But he became more verbally abusive towards Amelia. The harassment increased after my father-in-law passed away. It became normal for her to be yelled at, commanded to eat meals on the floor, and treated poorly by Elias. When going shopping, she was only allowed to buy items Elias specified, and her outings were limited to the bare minimum. If the cleaning wasn't perfect, or there were wrinkles in the washed shirts, she'd be punished with cold showers. Since water doesn't leave physical marks, there was no evidence of the abuse. I couldn't ask anyone for help, it was so hard, she said, tears spilling again. As I had suspected, Amelia confessed that she had endured relentless harassment from Elias. You've been enduring this all alone. It must have been so difficult for you. I wish I had noticed that something was going wrong earlier. While rubbing Amelia's back, I regretted my actions up until now. Elias was taken in for questioning after everything was revealed. The police told me this. Elias tried to act ignorant in front of the officers, but they didn't relent. They questioned why Amelia was so frightened of Elias, and why Rosie naturally spilled the stew on the floor. The reason why Amelia exhibited a fearful attitude towards Elias. The reason why Rosie naturally spilled the stew on the floor. The officers strongly stated that even without visible marks, the signs of abuse could be investigated with modern medical technology. Finally cornered, Elias confessed, "I've been under a lot of stress." He resented being strictly disciplined by Elias. Disciplined by his father since childhood, Elias recounted how he was meticulously instructed on the order of eating and the amount of food to take in each bite. Whenever he couldn't do it, he was repeatedly scolded in a harsh tone, saying, "You can't even do this simple thing." Forced to learn reading, writing, and spelling from a young age, he had to repeat them tirelessly if he made any mistakes. In elementary school, while other kids played games, he was sent to unwanted extracurricular activities and tutoring. He revealed his dissatisfaction with all of it. In high school, he was obliged to join the baseball club, which was notorious for being the strictest in the school and not something he wanted to join. The first time he played soccer during a break, just for fun, he fell in love with it. It was so enjoyable, but his father would never allow him to switch to the soccer team or accept losing. Elias couldn't hide his shock at his own words. His mother had trusted his father to take care of him, never questioning why he ate his meals in a separate room. She was happy that he was doing well in his studies and taking his club activities seriously. But all the efforts Elias made weren't because he enjoyed them. His mother was unaware that he liked soccer, nor was she informed about the exchanges with his father. She just prepared lunch every day. She had no idea that Elias was going through all that. "It's natural that you didn't know, Mom," he explained. He always said it was a man-to-man promise and kept me silent. Despite being intensely trained mentally, Elias managed to maintain his composure to avoid alarming his mother. He never wanted to study that much. He was interested in trendy games and fashion, but everything was restricted. He even loved sweets. Forced into an arranged marriage, his frustrations only grew. It seems that the marriage was arranged without his consent, and he even began to feel like nothing mattered anymore. Though his mother moved away from home after getting married, Elias said there was tremendous pressure, as if he was being watched, just because it was a person his father chose. He felt a release after his father passed away. "I became obsessed with the idea that Amelia should also strive like me," Elias concluded. "I thought I was raising him alongside my husband, unaware of the pain he endured. The guilt and helplessness overwhelmed me. Despite their silence, it was my responsibility too. Amelia, it's not enough to just apologize, but I was wrong in how I raised him. I'm truly sorry. No, I'm sorry I couldn't heal Elias's heart." Moved by Amelia's ever-kind words, true to her nature, tears involuntarily spilled from his mother's eyes. "Amelia, you are not at fault. I'm truly sorry for everything up until now." Elias was arrested for assault. He seemed somewhat relieved after revealing his feelings. Perhaps ready to reflect and atone for his actions, Amelia decided to divorce Elias and return to her parents' home with Rosie. "Thank you for everything. I haven't done anything to deserve your thanks. I decided to provide financial support to Amelia and Rosie in place of Elias. She initially hesitated but accepted when I expressed my wish to maintain a good relationship. I'm sorry if I made you feel bad. I'll always consider you and Rosie as family. Thank you. Having you with us is reassuring. Later, Amelia, having settled down, seemed to regain her bright, cheerful demeanor. I regularly received photos of her and Rosie, a small reminder of the family bond we shared. She invites me a few times a year to visit Rosie. Mother-in-law, would you like to come over for a visit? Rosie misses you. Since that incident, the seasons have cycled through, and life has been peaceful. Rosie quickly grew up, started going to elementary school, and even began taking the train by herself to stay over at my place. Just like that, Rosie, you're doing great. I praised her during one of these visits as I taught her how to make hamburgers. Grandma, this is so much fun, Rosie said with an untroubled smile, perfectly shaping her hamburger patty. Yes, it is. It would be nice if Mommy could join us next time and make some together. Yeah, I'll make a lot, Rosie exclaimed enthusiastically. I savored this happiness. I was relieved that Elias hadn't left any emotional scars on Rosie and hoped she would always keep smiling. As I arranged her little hamburgers in the frying pan, Rosie's eyes sparkled with excitement for the finished meal. May your life be filled with smiles from now on, I whispered, almost like a vow,